Welcome back to Couch Talk, everybody. I just got back from seeing Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, and I don't really know how to begin. Listen, I have seen every single Harry Potter movie since the first one came out. I've seen them all in theaters. I grew up with these movies. I love the Harry Potter films. I think they're excellent world building movies. I think that even though they kind of started off as like kid teen movies, they still stand pretty tall with like the Lord of the Rings and Star Wars in terms of like world building and how monumentally huge they've become. There is an entire wizarding world in Universal Studios, so it's this is such a big, massive thing that has had such a huge impact on our world, and we'd all be lying if we didn't say that it was up top there with the rest of like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. It's a big thing. The thing that the old Harry Potter movies had going for them, what drew people in so much was the fact that we were all growing up with Harry Potter, and he was the relatable character. He started off his journey not being a wizard, so we got to, go on this journey with him and become this wizard with him. Like, we were there with him every step of the way, and he was the relatable character because he was the fish out of water. And learning to be a wizard, like, that's what was so intriguing. And then on top of that, we got an amazing story about how he's the chosen one, the boy who lived, and he has to eventually fight Voldemort and everything. The problem with the Fantastic Beasts movies is there's no relatable character. The only relatable character really is Jacob, and he's kind of useless, honestly. I like Jacob. He was good in the first Fantastic Beasts. He was funny, but he's not the main character. Newt Scamander, as much as I like him and I think he's charismatic and charming, he's not relatable because he's already a wizard. He's already in his prime, so we're kind of just along for the adventure he goes on, but if the adventure isn't that good, it's not going to suck us in. I enjoyed the first Fantastic Beasts. I didn't think it was as good as the Harry Potter franchise. I think it was better than like the Sorcerer's Stone. But once the Chamber of Secrets kicked in and like he really started to go on this adventure and this journey of becoming the one that would eventually take down Voldemort, it started pulling me in with each one more and more. So this one, the first Fantastic Beast was good as a one and done, but it is one part out of a 5-part arc, and you didn't really get a whole lot of depth in terms of what the big overarching story was in Fantastic Beasts. So if it was just like a one and done spin-off, like, it's enjoyable, but to sit here and say that there's going to be 5 movies, it's like you have to really back it up with something good, and you just don't really get that with this one. The problem with this movie is, like I said, it's part 2 of a 5-part arc, and like I know what you're saying, like Harry Potter, was part 1 of like a 9-part arc, but the thing with the Harry Potter films is, a good movie doesn't get made going in saying like this is gonna be 9 films, so let's just start this one right off the bat with a huge cliffhanger leading into like what the rest of it are gonna be. It needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So if it doesn't spawn this huge franchise, people could still pop this movie and watch it and enjoy it. Like, it does leave you on a little cliffhanger, like at the very end, but like it still has a really great, like, just feel good, like this kid's going to school and becoming a wizard. But the beginning of this movie puts you right in the middle of like this big epic action scene with Johnny Depp's character Grindelwald, and the end of the movie leaves you on a giant cliffhanger. I feel like this movie doesn't have a beginning or an end. It's kind of just the middle. Watching this movie is like watching Avengers Infinity Wars, and the beginning of the movie is the scene where Thanos' like men, like his like the knights of whatever, come down and start attacking the city, and then it ends right before the Battle of Wakanda. Like, it doesn't have the whole beginning and it doesn't have the whole end like the Battle of Wakanda. It's just like that middle section, and it doesn't feel complete. This movie's like watching the Titanic, and the movie picks up right where they're dancing. Jack and Rose are dancing in like the ballroom below deck, and ends right when they hit the iceberg. Like, that's just how this movie feels. It doesn't feel like it has a beginning set up and an ending set up. It's just the middle. And I mean, to be fair, that's what she's going for, but it's kind of risky because you can't watch these movies now as just like one thing and enjoy it. Like, I love The Prisoner of Azkaban, so time after time I'll put it on and just watch that one. But I can't ever watch this one now because I would need to watch the first one and then the last 3 to fully enjoy it. I can't just experience it as just a whole movie. It is just 2 hours out of a 10-hour long movie, because that's essentially what this movie is. I mean, yes, it's taking place over the course of 19 years, but the way they're structuring these movies is that the first movie is the beginning of the second movie. Like, that's just how it is. And it's kind of discouraging because now, like I said, I can never just pop this one and watch it and enjoy it for what it is because it doesn't have a beginning. And the ending, it leaves you on such a big cliffhanger, which it's good, but it just doesn't structurally feel right. Another problem this movie has is it's trying to cram in so many characters to, introduce all these other plots that are eventually going to all conclude to like this big final showdown in the last one. Because everyone knows, from the lore of Harry Potter, you heard it in the movies that Dumbledore and Grindelwald got in this big epic battle. It's pretty much like the war of, wizards. Like, it's going to be this big showdown where Dumbledore kills Grindelwald. And this movie is really, like, even though Newt Scamander is the main character, it's really Dumbledore's movie because it's about the evolution of how he, like, steps up and kills the man that he supposedly loves, even though you don't get much of that in this movie. But they just cram so many characters into this. Like, Zoe Kravitz plays Letta Lestrange, and she has a very important role towards the very end of this movie, and she also has a big reveal of, like, what happened to her when she was, like, a little girl, and you don't see her in this franchise until this movie. You didn't even see her in the first Fantastic Beasts. Well, you saw, like, a glimpse of her, but it was, like, a split second in a picture. But she gets introduced in this one. She's in the movie for probably a total of, like, 15 minutes, and then something happens, and they expect me to care, but it's not enough character development for me to care. Like, I just didn't care. And I feel like I should have really cared about what happened, and I just didn't. Queenie and Jacob were completely useless in this movie. I mean, I understand why they were in it because there is another important thing that happens to them towards the end of this movie, but they were really just useless throughout this entire movie. There was no need for them to be in it. Like, I mean, they have to be in it because they were in the first one, but, like, they serve no purpose for the story, so they were just completely, like, wasted here. And I like Jacob's character a lot. I would have liked to see more of him because he's, like, really funny and stuff. He has good chemistry with Newt, but he just wasn't there. Jude Law is fantastic as young Dumbledore, but I mean, he's in the movie for a total of 5 minutes, and, I keep making these complaints about these characters. I get it, like, this is part of a 10, hour long, just one overarching story, so it's like, I need to consider the fact that Jacob was in a lot of the first one, but with Dumbledore, like, he just is in it so very little, and a lot of people are arguing, like, well, he's going to be in the next couple ones, and it's like, yeah, but, the trailers made it seem like he was going to be predominantly, like, in this movie a little bit more and serve a bigger purpose, and he didn't. I mean, I'm not really going to fault the movie for that, because, again, like, I can't fault J.K. Rowling for her vision of wanting to make this huge, overarching, like, you need to see all these 5 movies for this one story arc to conclude, but the trailers just set it up like it was going to be a lot more personal between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and I just didn't get that. I didn't get enough Dumbledore that I wanted, so I was a little let down in that aspect. Johnny Depp is Grindelwald, and he's good. It's just, the problem with his character is he is supposed to be, like, the big bad of this franchise, but Voldemort feels far more sinister than Grindelwald. I mean, Grindelwald, the whole cause of him doing the things he's doing is because he's sick and tired of, like, living in fear from humans, and, he wants their kind to be free and not have to be in hiding anymore. And he's kind of like a motivational public speaker in terms of he just wants his people to flourish. And, I mean, it's at the cost of muggles or no-magers or humans or whatever, but he just doesn't seem sinister. Like, he does sinister things, like he has a really horrible moment with a pet, and he kills a lot of people in this movie, but there's just something about Voldemort that felt so much more creepy and eerie. Like, he was scary. Like, I remember growing up and, like, seeing him, I was, like, genuinely terrified of him. They made him a really creepy character, and, like, the whole, like, I kind of like to call it, like, the Godzilla effect. Like, where in the new movie, I felt like the Godzilla was so powerful because you barely got to see him. So when you fucking got those, like, little, like, 2-second glimpses of him before he disappeared, like, it was just intense. And that's kind of how Voldemort was. Like, he was always, like, the man who shall not be named. Like, you never say his name, and he was always, like, just talked about. So, like, it just amped him up more to be, like, this creepy guy that you haven't seen. So when you do finally see him, like, 5 movies in, it's like, holy shit, it's finally happening. And this, it's just, he's there and he's trying to rally a bunch of wizards to, join him. But he just doesn't seem as scary or as effective as Ralph Fiennes did as Voldemort. So as of right now, it's a little bit of a letdown, but I know what it's leading to. I know it's leading to a big battle between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and I'm sure you're going to get to see Johnny Depp do more sinister things and grow as a villain over the course of the next 3 movies. But again, the trailers to this movie promised me a lot more of his character development, and I just didn't get it. This movie had a lot of just nonsense in between, honestly. I mean, the essential plot of this movie is just, Tina, who's also not really like useful in this movie either. Like I just feel like no one was useful in this movie because it was kind of like that in between. Like the plot was Tina was trying to find Credence before Grindelwald could because she wants to keep what he has inside of him safe and out of the hands of bad people like Grindelwald, and that's really the plot. It's just everyone's trying to get to Credence first, and in between you have Newt just chasing his beasts around. Like it just seems like filler. Like I feel like this movie could have been 20 minutes long and I still would have gotten like the point of it. Or they could have shaved like 30 minutes of useless shit out of the other movie and added the ending of this movie in, and it could have been one whole thing. Like that's the thing. If the first movie was merged with this one and they took out a lot of like the Fantastic Beasts stuff, which I know the movie's called Fantastic Beasts, but like I just feel like if they want to get this story rolling of Dumbledore versus Grindelwald, they could have erased some of that beast stuff and added like the main plot points of this movie in and that final showdown, which was really cool. And that could have been one whole movie that left you on a cliffhanger, but I mean, it would have felt solid. It would have had a beginning, a middle, and an end. This movie really only had two scenes that really impressed me, and one was in a scene with like Newt where he rides on the back of an animal that I captured earlier in the movie and defends himself against these like creepy looking Halloween cat things. And the other one is the final showdown, but the 2 hours and 14 minutes in between really wasn't anything of significance, except for when Dumbledore was on screen and Grindelwald. Those two characters, when they were on screen, they were furthering the story because, like I said, it really is about Dumbledore and Grindelwald. It's their movie. It's just Newt is there to kind of bridge the gaps between the scenes that they're not there. And Newt is no Harry Potter. I think that this movie kind of suffers a little bit from that because everyone loves Harry Potter, and I know that this is trying to establish itself as like, same universe but new franchise, but I don't know, there's just something about Newt where I guess because I'm not growing with him as a character that I can't attach myself to him as much as I want to. Anyway, yeah, the problem with this movie is just that it doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like I turned it on like a half hour in and shut it off a half hour before it ends. Like that's just how I feel watching this movie. I don't think it deserves the hate it's getting. I don't think it deserves a 47%. Like it's not a bad story. It's just, one part out of a 5-part story, so it just doesn't feel conclusive. And structurally, I mean, the movie's directed great. Like the movie looks beautiful and everything. Like there's no problems with the directing aspect. It's just it left me wanting so much more, and it doesn't feel structurally there. I'm going to give this movie a 6 because I do love the lore. I do love the characters when they're doing useful stuff. I like where this is going because I always wanted to see this battle between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and I love like the chemistry that they have together and like why, Dumbledore refuses to fight Grindelwald, at least in this movie. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm hoping that as they, go on, they'll get better because it'll get closer towards that climax that I really want to see. But as of right now, this movie let me down a little bit. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Did you love this movie? I thought my girlfriend really enjoyed it for what it was. Did you want more? Do you feel the same way that I do about the structure? What do you think about the box office income of this movie falling short of what they projected? I think it was supposed to make like 75 million, but it only made like 60 something. So what do you think? Do you think fans are kind of falling off, or do you think that people just heard the bad reviews and decided not to go? Let's talk about it down below in the comments, and as always, I'll catch you next time.